talking about Big Freaking Rat. Maybe this could go as a double feature with Big Ass Spider. Anyway, Big Freaking Rat is written and directed by Thomas J. Churchill and stars Scott C. Rowe and Felissa Rose. Felissa Rose actually a producer on the movie as well. So this is kind of a low-budget, almost Troma-style B-movie horror film, of course, about a giant rat. Now, this movie is filled with movie references. Now, some of them are less obvious. For example, I can't help but think the intro of the movie where we see two kind of workmen dumping toxic waste into a kind of like a river and stuff. This is where the rat obviously gets its size and everything from. That, to me, was very much reminiscent of the kind of like the working man thing from like Return of the Living Dead Part 2, for example, and that sort of thing. And so there are a few kind of like little nods to different kind of movies here and there. It's quite interesting. Anyway, so what's the story? So we have this summer camp, kind of like, you know, nature reserve in America somewhere that has been closed for a long time because of toxic waste and stuff. But it's now being reopened, and we have a staff of kind of like rangers and this ranger, a particular ranger, has a couple of his family members join him for a while for the summer. I'm assuming his nephew and his niece. But interesting, they're not brother and sister; they're separate cousins, if that makes sense. And his girlfriend is Felissa Rose, who was also a ranger. And they're just about to open up, and there's various kind of guests arriving on a kind of like an early pass sort of thing. However, they are menaced by this kind of giant rat. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. Okay, so let's talk about what works first of all. So I'm going to be honest with you. This to me was somewhat of a guilty pleasure. I actually had quite a lot of fun with this movie, but objectively, maybe it's, you know, it's objectively has some serious issues here. But I got to tell you, this movie to me was loads of fun, and it's a number of reasons why I enjoyed it. Number one, it's surprisingly good characters in it. I was really impressed with Scott C. Rowe as this kind of like this sheriff ranger figure, and how he is an uncle to this kind of young lad and he's kind of like this sort of teenage guy, teenage boy, teenage girl. But he just seemed to, I don't know, he honestly seemed to have this kind of great family relationship that seemed, even though it was in a kind of a cheesy B-movie horror film, to feel somewhat genuine. And his kind of girlfriend as well, Felissa Rose, again, you know, they really act like a kind of like a, you know, fun little family who kind of get on quite well. You know, the uncle's trying to kind of bring the kind of the nephew out of his shell a little bit and kind of get him to be kind of like more, you know, with rough and tumble with nature whilst he's burying his head in his phone, things like this. But they're not antagonistic to each other. They seem to have a genuinely kind of good relationship. The kids generally do what they are told, which I thought was quite good. So it almost goes against type to a lot of these kind of standard sort of like relationships that you have within families, where, you know, but they actually seem like, I mean, pull it to the actors here and the writing, because it really brought home realistic characters in a way in such a cheesy B movie. It's really bizarre that you have such good character work in a kind of a slapsticky B movie horror. Number two, the humour. Okay, humour is subjective, so I will say that, but goddamn, this movie had some funny moments in it. I mean, genuinely funny moments. Now, I will say, the funny moments are more or less, for me at least, to do with this kind of the Italian mobsters that happen to be renting one of these kind of villas. There's a really funny, quite close to the knuckle joke involving a raccoon. But the funniest line, the funniest sequence was they've got like they're questioning some guy, they're torturing him and stuff like that. But they got they asked the kind of the rangers to get an exterminator to come round, and this exterminator turns up, and he's kind of like Italian. So they actually assume he's another gangster and stuff, but he's actually an exterminator. And there's just a really quite... I mean, it goes on a little bit. It kind of outstays its welcome a little bit. But initially, it's just hilarious and so well written and so well acted. Where this kind of guy is kind of like... They're talking to him about, you know, killing this kind of guy they got hostage. But he's taking it as they're talking about killing a rat and things like that. It was just very, very funny for me, and so well done by the actors, particularly the guy who was playing the kind of the exterminator, who I'll come on to again. I mean, yeah, the acting is cheesy, but I've got to say there are some really memorable characters here. Like I said, I think the kind of this rat catcher guy, this exterminator, such a kind of a fun character. I can legitimately see him becoming like a kind of like a Bruce Campbell Ash sort of style character, maybe going from different kind of, you know, films and stuff like that, and having different adventures and stuff. He's like a really genuinely quite funny and very memorable character. Fantastic work. So that was quite good. Now the effects themselves are, like I've mentioned, they're trauma level effects, super cheesy. But it is kind of like, it goes into a kind of a gory kind of, you know, gory kills. So there is a fair amount of kills. But the effects are really crap, but kind of funny crap is the best way I'm just going to describe it. But nonetheless, there are some kind of like, the way it's shot is very quickly cut when it's kind of attacking. And I think this is always to disguise the fact that the effects are pretty poor. But it kind of works in a way, because you just accept that this is a crappy, you know, special effect in regards to this giant rat. But it still kind of looks kind of fun, if that makes sense. Like a fun B-movie, kind of movie monster, so to speak. I do have an issue with some of the other cheapness we'll come on to, but the actual monster itself, yeah, it's not particularly impressive, but it's still, you can enjoy it for it. If you're a B-movie fan, at least, I think you can enjoy it for the schlocky goodness that it is, especially if you are a fan of trauma movies, at least early trauma movies. It's very, very reminiscent of that. So, what doesn't work? Now, I've mentioned the humour, it is subjective, so some people might not like that. I found the humour quite, for the most hits here, but some people may not, so let me just get that out of the way. So two main things for me in the negative column here. Number one, our protagonists do not even know this rat exists until 10 minutes until the end of the movie. The last 10 minutes of the film is actually where we have the altercations between really any of our kind of like central protagonists and this rat. To me, it left it too long, and to have that kind of like that confrontation. And then when we have that, I feel some of the altercations with particular characters are over too quickly. And in one instance, you really don't actually know what happened. And I'm not going to say who, but there's a sequence where I'm not quite sure what actually happened to that specific character, because it's just on the screen for so quickly. I don't really like to rewrite movies when I'm kind of reviewing them, but for me, I would have spent less time kind of maybe killing off randos, because there's a lot that the rat goes and kills lots of kind of different random people who are in the camp and stuff. I would have maybe had the sequence, or at least the kind of the start of the sequence where the family start to become aware of this thing, had go on for like 20 minutes maybe, rather than just 10. To me, it just wasn't enough of it was just cramming too much in. So maybe you could say there is a pacing issue with this film. To a certain degree. Now, the rat does turn up throughout the film and is kind of quite, violent when it does. Now, you could pick holes with the logic. The rat kills a hell of a lot of people, yet no blood is ever discovered, no bodies are ever discovered, no one ever reports anyone missing. So yes, logic, forget about it, and that's going to be a joke within the movie. But anyway, so yeah, you have to accept this is going to be a B-movie, kind of, silly film, which is weird because, again, such a kind of like quite genuine portrayal of this family. But anyway, yeah, but there's lots of kind of like things that don't really kind of make sense as well. The other thing is, I mentioned, I think the rat monster does look cheap, but you can still have fun with it. If you've watched things like the Brain Dead film, like Dead or Alive as it's called in America, Pete Jackson's early stuff, yeah, I mean, they kind of look silly, especially Brain Dead, but they're kind of fun, and that's what the rat is. But what does look cheap are some of the sets here do look particularly badly, you know, very quickly put up. For example, the walls of a cave, you know, it clearly is just like a blanket and stuff like that. You know, it looks really, really cheap in places. Some of the kind of the sets and stuff like that, and it almost, I mean, so much so it kind of looks like almost like cardboard, like old '60s Star Trek sets. As people kind of like would take the mick out of them. It kind of looks real kind of bad. So, yeah, I mean, objectively, if I had to say here, objectively, people can critique the nonsensical kind of plots, the kind of like the somewhat kind of cheesy and rubbish rats with a couple of instances where they use CGI is not a good idea because it doesn't look good. But it's it's quite minimal, to be fair. It's more just the rat blinking and one sequence where it runs. But I personally can forgive the kind of the practical effects there because it was fun, but some people may not. Now, this is a hard film for me to rate in a way because I actually enjoyed it. I did have a lot of fun with it, and that entertainment value comes a lot from the characters, as I've said. But objectively, I can understand that people will just see a very cheap monster film. So, bear that in mind. I'm going to give my review for my enjoyment factor, but I appreciate objectively this. I'm probably going to review this higher than maybe other people will do. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10, purely because I had a fun with this movie. I could have had more fun had the family actually interacted with this thing more. But there you go. But I do understand that some people may question why I we've rated this as an above average film, because I can understand why people wouldn't see it. But for me, it's a 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it, and character work goes a long way with me. And this movie just had quite a lot of fun, silly, kind of gory effects, and some goddamn funny jokes. Anyway, 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.